Denver Public Schools school closure list just came out. Spanish-speaking Coloradans are being targeted with bigoted political advertising. It's not true either. The most obviously false political claim we've put to the truth test this year. A next viewer's question about a candidate promising to term limit himself. Schools fighting to regain lost learning during the pandemic.
I've been doing this for 35 years, and I will tell you I've never seen this kind of impact on student learning.
And a craft brewer thinks one way to help Ukraine is for Coloradans to buy their beer. Cheers to that idea. Next. Colorado's largest school district just dropped the list of 10 elementary and middle schools it plans to close. Declining enrollment is hitting Denver just like it hit neighboring Jeffco. DPS is spinning this plan as unifying schools, as in closing some and unifying the student body into a nearby school building. Schools recommended for closure due to low enrollment are Columbian Elementary, Palmer Elementary, the Math, Science, and Leadership Academy, Schmidt Elementary, Eagleton Elementary, Fairview Elementary, Colfax Elementary, International Academy of Denver at Harrington, Denver Discovery School, and Whittier K-8. School board will vote on the closure plan middle of next month. We already knew it, and school test scores across the country now confirm it. Kids in Colorado and elsewhere are behind in school because of the pandemic and remote learning. Math proficiency for 4th and 8th graders in Colorado are each down nearly double digits. Our Steve Staker looks at how schools are trying to make up for lost learning.
Are we flat?
No.
We're not flat? There's no flat earthers in here?
If you simply walked around an elementary school today, it would seem like everything's back to normal. But new national testing data finds kids around the country and here in Colorado are behind where they were before the pandemic.
It confirmed what we had already seen.
Dr. Kim LeBlanc Esparza is the deputy superintendent of Jeffco Public Schools.
I've been doing this for 35 years, and I will tell you I've never seen this kind of impact on student learning.
The National Assessment of Educational Progress released its first score since the pandemic this week. It found that 4th and 8th graders in Colorado slipped quite a bit in math proficiency and a tad in reading as well. LeBlanc Esparza says the impact of the pandemic transcends grade levels.
When you think about our current kindergartners, they never went to preschool. During the time that they would have normally gone, it didn't exist. Learning to cooperate, learning to focus, learning to listen to someone else directing what you're doing with your time. And just some of the background information that we assumed kids would have when they walked through the door, they didn't.
Do we see little up?
What do you do to make up 2 years worth of loss?
High dosage tutoring is something that folks are seeing significant impacts on student learning by being really purposeful, intentional with small groups, 1 to 4 students, an hour, 3 times a day, really focused in on specific skills that kids don't have.
That makes sense. And spaces.
Beautiful.
Making sure that the groups are small and they do it during the school day so that there's not an inequitability for students who can't stay after school or students who transportation might be an impact.
Looking at the numbers can be daunting, but LeBlanc Esparza says kids can absolutely make up that difference.
Yes, they can, but it's going to take a few years. It just like it takes a few years to have that impact, it takes a few years to overcome that impact.
Dr. Kim says the biggest gap that she has seen is in 5th through 9th grade math. Really complex stuff, if I remember it correctly, and abstract mathematical concepts that take a lot of one-on-one or small group time to try to make up. But she says having kids back in school in predictable ways will allow for more targeted instruction, which can help get kiddos caught back up, Kyle.
This might be a dumb question, but like if the learning loss is pretty much kind of across the board for a grade, other than standardized tests, couldn't they just say, well, you know, our 5th graders used to be here and now they're kind of here. 4th graders used to be here and now they're kind of here if everybody's together, you know?
Every teacher would say there's no such thing as a dumb question. And they told me today that basically they already do that with a lot of kids. They may not come into 5th grade with everything that a 4th grader needed. So you spend a lot of time in those early stages kind of working with them one-on-one to make sure that they're meeting the 5th grade goalposts so that they can get, or the 4th grade goalpost, so that they can get to the 5th grade goalpost by the end of 5th grade and kind of get caught back up. Thing is, you're just going to be doing this in kind of a wholesale way because there are a lot of kids who missed.
That's why it takes Allison. Like, this is what teachers know how to do. They know how to get kids from here to there. There's just more of it because of what happened in society.
And they have them where they know that they're going to be so they can do that focused work.
Steve, thank you.
Yep.
There is an attack ad in the race for Secretary of State. What a time to be alive. The ad falsely paints GOP candidate Pam Anderson as a MAGA Republican. Anderson is not an election denier. But the ad accurately says that Anderson's been campaigning with some people who are saying that elections are rigged.
Colorado elections run like clockwork. But Pam Anderson wants major MAGA changes, making it harder to vote.
That's not true. Republican Secretary of State candidate Pam Anderson has a demonstrated history as a county clerk and head of the state's Clerks Association of expanding access to voting. She is not part of former President Trump's MAGA movement. Anderson has stood up against Trump's big lie about election rigging.
She said automatic voter registration was wrong.
This needs context. Anderson supports automatic voter registration, but she's criticized how Democratic Secretary of State Jenna Griswold implemented it. Griswold called Anderson out for that during their 9 News debate.
This has been something that I've had a hard time following my opponent's position on.
And Anderson has not been clear at times in explaining the issue here at a Republican primary forum for May.
I agree. Automatic voter registration with the Democratic legislature was wrong for Colorado and has eroded our voter list.
Bottom line on this, Anderson is calling for reforms to automatic voter registration, not an end to the system. The ad from a Democratic PAC makes another whopper of a claim that Anderson
wants fewer ballot drop boxes.
That's not true. Anderson has been a leader on drop boxes. The ad twists a concern that county clerks had about an unfunded mandate to add drop boxes. Griswold echoed this misleading line of attack in their debate, and Anderson responded.
See, there you go again, Jenna, misleading people about my record. As the executive director of the County Clerks Association, my opponent dropped a bill that no election official in the state had seen that cost millions and millions of dollars and could not be implemented. 61 of the county clerks across the state opposed the bill, and it was my job to go to the table and also work with the legislature, who then funded part of that bill.
This election, she's campaigning with election deniers.
This is true. Anderson is campaigning alongside election deniers, like gubernatorial candidate Heidi Ganahl's running mate, Danny Moore. Anderson says she's doing that so that she can reach those Republican crowds to explain why elections aren't rigged.
We can't trust Pam Anderson to run the next one.
That's up to you. This ad makes a series of misleading claims. Anderson is no MAGA Republican, but campaigning with election deniers has raised questions about her judgment. You can see the full 30-minute debate between Pam Anderson and Secretary of State Jenna Griswold on 9news.com, and we've also put it up on 9 News and the Next YouTube channels. Or if it's easier, you can text the word debate to 303-871-1491. We'll send you a link to the full debate and a reminder about our final debate before Election Day. Our series of 6 wraps up Friday, a debate between Democratic Senator Michael Bennet and Republican challenger Joe O'Dea. That will air at 7 o'clock here on 9 News, 7 o'clock, live from CSU in Fort Collins. Republican Mesa County Clerk Tina Peters is probably going to have a pretty relaxing election day, given that she's not up for re-election, and she also is not allowed to run elections anymore because of the whole facing felony charges for tampering with voting systems deal. Today, Peters formally resigned from the Colorado County Clerks Association. That group of her peers has pushed back strongly on her election rigging conspiracy theories. This group of her fellow elected clerks is Democrats, Republicans, unaffiliated clerks. They have borne the brunt of a lot of the public anger whipped up by Peters and others. The head of the Clerks Association, former Republican clerk Matt Crane, responded to Peters' exit from the group today, telling us, quote, "Serious people are doing the hard work of conducting elections in November. Tina's not one of them." Tonight's next question comes from a Next viewer with a sharp eye. Patrick noticed a disclaimer on his ballot under third-party Senate candidate Frank Atwood's name. It notes that Atwood signed a declaration to limit his time in office to 2 terms. Colorado's Constitution allows any candidate to add a self-imposed term limit right under their name on the ballot. They just have to sign a declaration through the Secretary of State's office. You should note, it's not actually the law that they have to abide by it. A brewer from our state heads to Ukraine and returns with an idea of how Coloradans could support brewers in a war zone.
So it takes a little bit of disposable income to afford craft beer, and you throw a war into the mix and all that disposable income kind of goes out the window.
The trick will be getting that Ukrainian beer here next. Spanish-speaking voters in our state are being targeted with some ugly and false disinformation. Anti-transgender messages in Spanish are being mailed to voters by a group that's led by the architect of former President Trump's most hardline immigration and border policies. Here's politics guy Marshall Zellinger.
This Spanish-language mailer starts with Joe Biden and progressive politicians and their leftist allies in government, and then the rest is full of misinformation and anti-transgendered content.
Neither of us are fluent, but we know enough, understand enough that we knew this was disgusting propaganda.
Michael Ramirez and his wife, Debbie Velasquez, each got this in the mail in Thornton.
We sat there together translating words here and there, and it was like ugly. Esterilización, sterilization.
Puberty blockers.
Puberty blockers, yeah.
Bloqueadores de la pubertad. And also removing healthy genitals.
Yeah.
Removiendo los senos y los genitales sanos.
The mailer is from America First Legal Foundation, run by Stephen Miller, who was a senior advisor to former President Trump. It's a dark money group, meaning America First Legal Foundation does not have to reveal the people who help pay for these mailers. The mailer is full of anti-trans rhetoric, quoting the Daily Wire, a conservative website led by Ben Shapiro and Jeremy Boring.
We have transgendered friends, so this does not reflect us at all.
So why did Debbie and Michael receive this? America First Legal Foundation did not respond to my request for information about how many and where this was sent. But Debbie and Michael have a suspicion about why they each got one.
I think it's just because of our last names.
Yeah, I think it's from the voter rolls, and they just went down and looked for Velasquez, Martinez, Ortega, Ramirez.
That group is also airing radio ads on 3 Spanish-language stations here in the metro area. The mailer does not advocate for or against a candidate, but Kyle, it is clearly anti-democratic. And Debbie and Michael both live in the boundaries of the new Congressional District 8. They live in Thornton, and we know how contentious that race can be.
We should say the issue of transgender rights has not really been at issue in the 8th Congressional District between Democrat Yadira Caraveo and Republican Barb Kirkmeyer.
No, and there have been discussions. I know I got help listening to a broadcast this morning on Spanish-language radio where they were talking about this mailer and how it seems to be in the community believed to be scaring voters from maybe participating and giving false information. And they read this and maybe they don't want to be a part of it at all, or push them one direction, perhaps.
All right. Appreciate the insight on it. Thank you, Marshall.
Those clouds quickly racing in. This is our live camera in Cheeseman Park, overlooking downtown Denver, certainly up into the high country. Saw some cooler weather, daytime highs in the 30s and 40s here in the metro area, upper 50s and 60s for us. But we're just starting to see another wave of snowfall starting to roll in, primarily out to the western slope in and around I-70. A couple of isolated showers going off to the eastern plains. We'll be monitoring a couple of waves of snowfall pushing in over the course of about the next 48 hours. Let's fire up the futurecast. Here we are about 6 o'clock. Clouds in place across the I-25 corridor. Can't rule out seeing maybe 1 or 2 isolated showers later tonight, primarily across the Palmer Divide. It's going to be about 11 o'clock or so. Jefferson, Douglas County, and tomorrow morning we'll wake up to partly cloudy skies. Meanwhile, up in the mountains, they'll get that blast of snow early on, a little lull throughout the day into the early evening, and then here we go again late tomorrow night into Thursday morning. Another storm pushes through. So much so that we have winter weather advisories in place. They kick in at midnight tonight and will continue until 6 o'clock on Thursday. About 5 to 10 inches of snowfall coming through with this storm. One rolls out and another one rolls in. That's going to keep us cool. We'll stay in the 50s tomorrow and then drop off into the 40s with possibly some rain and snow early Thursday morning.
Coloradans love beer. Coloradans support Ukraine. Folks, it's obvious.
A good way to support Ukrainian craft brewers is to buy the beer.
You just can't do it yet. A brewer's around the world trip and his idea. Next.
One of Colorado's most talked about breweries these days wants us to be talking about beer from Ukraine. Outer Range Brewery co-founder Lee Cleghorn traveled to Ukraine to meet craft brewers trying to stay in business during the Russian invasion. And he came away with an idea.
So they just have a positive attitude, even though all the challenges that they're being faced with right now. My name is Lee Cleghorn. I'm the co-founder of Outer Range Brewing Company. We're located in Frisco, Colorado. About a month ago, I was talking online with a couple brewers, and one of the brewers was from Ukraine. We were talking on Instagram. I asked that brewer, how can we best support you? Then he said, you should come to Ukraine. And so I decided to go. I went to Ukraine. I went a couple nights ago, and the whole point of the trip was to go over to Ukraine and brew a collaboration beer with a brewery there and just get to know them and figure out what their issues were and how we could help the best from the US. A big part of craft beer is that it's a kind of a luxury item for common people. So it takes a little bit of disposable income to afford craft beer. And you throw a war into the mix and all that disposable income kind of goes out the window. So their demand for beer has definitely decreased since the war started. So a good way to support Ukrainian craft brewers is to buy the beer. So we're going to work with a couple of distributors that we know and importers and try to help them get some beer sold in the US. The Ukrainians are going to have a really hard winter coming up. So if you can, buy Ukrainian. Pay attention to what's going on over there because it matters.
Outer Range says it'll work with Ukrainian brewers to help distribute their product here in the States. They're also planning a Ukrainian tap takeover up at their brewery in Frisco. Oh, did we get feedback from teachers tonight? A ton of it. They take me to school next. I love that so many teachers watch this show because it means that when I get something wrong, I'll be politely corrected, and it also means that we'll get thought-provoking questions every night. Nancy writes, I saw your story on how to help kids catch up academically after the pandemic. As a teacher, Nancy says, I see this every day. I agree small groups will make a difference. And she asks, how can that happen when I have 28 to 30 kids in every class period? Carolyn, another teacher, writes in to simply say, kids will live through setbacks in their educational proficiency. And more feedback from Sharon, who signed her email, a proud, retired, certified educator. She says, our professional teachers will take children where they are and go forward. That is what education is about. Sharon says, everyone take a deep breath. You heard the teacher. See you next time.